Okay. I am Cephas, affectionately known as Uncle Bobby X Johnson. I'm the uncle of Oscar Grant.
Thank you. So this report came out yesterday. It's, I think, for a lot of people, pretty eye-opening that it was done in 2009, but because of the new law, we are all able to see it publicly. I understand that you did get to look over it. I don't know if you made it through all 94 pages, but first off, what was your initial takeaway from this?
Well, of course, it validated what we have been saying in the beginning that on the sidebar or the hearings that took place before the jury, we knew that Mesby had had many complaints filed against him, at least 4 at that time. Reading this report and seeing that in 1 year, 2008, he had 7 use of force incidents reports, and then of course Oscar making 8, more than any BART officer on the platform and more than most BART officers on the BART Police Department, says a whole lot about BART's failure to be accountable to the community and making sure that officers that have that type of complaints or that many complaints are not utilizing excessive force on a regular, consistent basis.
Yeah. I think to see the numbers spelled out is definitely astonishing. And then to see Officer Pirone, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, but we also are learning a little bit more about his role in this, and that he flat out, according to these investigators, lied about his interactions with Oscar the night of the shooting. I'm guessing that you're probably not surprised, but what was your reaction to see that actually written down on paper, that that's what these investigators found?
You know, again, it goes to, we sat in trial the whole time, and we knew that Officer Tony Pirone, his name, had lied on a regular, consistent basis in what happened on that platform. And then what was troubling about that was how he was almost able to get his job back, and yet he didn't, but he had committed a criminal act by criminalizing, in other words, stealing from the state unemployment. And that's the reason why he didn't get his job back. But he was a known troubled officer.
And it's interesting because Officer Pirone, thank you for pronouncing his last name for me, just lost his job. There weren't any sort of, legal issues that he faced following this, unlike Messery that did, obviously he got convicted here. But that, that's all that happened to him. Do you think that this report will shed maybe, I guess, more light or even have a future impact going forward now that we can all see this and know exactly what happened here according to these investigators? Do you think that this will create any sort of change for BART moving forward now in 2019, 10 years later?
Most definitely, this is a case and study case. In other words, that the things that happened on that night at the Fruitville BART station should be studied by not just BART itself, but many other agencies across the country, because there was many failures that took place. One, there was no transparency or accountability to the officers that had trouble within their own act in performing their duties. The matter of fact, the complaint process was broken. There was really at that time no oversight that would actually help BART become a better agency. And then also, as the report stated, being that is not a heavily loaded policing personnel agency, but the chief of police should have been more watchful in his personnel in their act. And I need to say this, I think it's really critical that we don't forget how Johannes Mesby had repeatedly utilized excessive force on a regular, consistent basis, and yet the jury was not privy to that information. And thereby, because they weren't privy to that information, they were only able to look at what happened that night on the platform and then try to reason what his state of mind might have been at that moment in time. But it's obvious that his state of mind on that platform from his history was abusiveness to young men of color, because he had a history of that. We're talking about 2008. But there was 3 others, I think 4 others before 2008, and he had only been on the force since 2006.
Right, 2 years on the force, yeah. I think lastly, I think it kind of goes back to your transparency comments that this report was done by these investigators in 2009 and they're only reviewing it yesterday. Just kind of go, and I mean, obviously law in California has changed, which has allowed us to be able to view this. But do you think that this kind of not being able to see this information, the public that is, did maybe more harm? Or do you think that it may have not made too much of a difference, but at least something that we can know?
If I heard the question right, because we didn't have the transparency law that we have today, if we had it in 2009, Oscar would be living today. sb1421, as you know, Nancy Skinner co-authored the bill, and we as families also supported the bill, knows that what's in the officer's personal folder at that period of time was not privy to the public. And because it wasn't privy to the public or even an oversight committee, there was no way we can actually help make officers accountable to their community. And so today, with SB 1421 in place, the community, as well as media stations like ABC, Channel 7, and KQED, and Channel 2, Quran 4, all can now say, hold up, what is this agency doing to hold these bad officers accountable for the wrongs they commit in their community? And so I think today, with the state of California having oversight of these agencies, will thereby make them all become better agencies. They will take account and consider what they need to do with those bad apples, because we know not all officers are bad apples. However, the ones that are bad, if no action is taken against them, that makes them all look bad.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Was there anything you thought I missed or anything you wanted to touch on with this report? I'm sure it wasn't easy for you all to look at this again, dredging it all back up again, seeing everything point by point, because this timeline is very, very specific through here. But anything that you wanted to mention?
Yes, I think SB 1421 will help us understand how effective AB 392 can be. AB 392, as you know, is the Saving Your Lives bill that Dr. Weber out of San Diego, Assemblywoman Dr. Weber, has initiated. And with 1421, we are now able to say that if an officer create the chaos that we saw on the BART platform, then officers should be held accountable. Tony Pirone is the one that created the chaos on that platform, and yet, as you stated, and as we know, nothing ever happened to him. Even with him falsifying documents with the California Unemployment Office and drawing unemployment for, I don't know if it was a couple of years or a year, and never was criminalized for that. He just simply was just let go. And as far as what we know, he may be working for another policing agency on the East Coast. None of us know, but it's not barring him from that opportunity, to our knowledge.
Statutory on murder.
Wow. That will definitely be something we need to look into, see if we can find out where he is today.
Right.
I haven't heard that.
Right. See, we don't have no real tracking mechanism to follow officers that just quit when they have complaints filed against them, or they just quit because they was involved in an officer-involved shooting, or they have excess amount of complaints filed against them of abuse. These officers actually are shooters. They go to another agency, and then what we know is they shoot another person. When they quit like that, there should be no, for what I understand about law, when it comes to murder, there is no time limit on a person that commits murder. And so Tony Pirone was an accessory to murder, and he should be charged for being an accessory to the murder of what happened to Oscar Grant. Now, we know Johannes Mesley got away with involuntary manslaughter, but Tony Pirone created the chaos. Tony Pirone basically murdered Oscar Grant through Johannes Mesley, and thereby should have been charged for that himself.
Do you think that with this coming out now, I don't know if your family has looked into, is there anything more that you all can do or try to pursue legally now that these investigators say that Tony Pirone did start all of this and did escalate everything
Well, you know, we attempted that when they basically gave Johannes Mesley involuntary manslaughter. We wanted to appeal the case, and of course, the Alameda County District Attorney at that time was Nancy O'Malley, said that there was no way that they can appeal the case because it would cost so much more money. But yes, we would love to see some action pursued against Tony Pirone, because here's an officer. I mean, what happened that night on the platform with Oscar Grant is just one incident, but he's been involved in other incidents. And yet, we know he lied to the state of California, stole money from the state of California, was in the military, no telling how many people he may have killed while in, I think it was Iraq, where he had went for a time period before he came back to California to be given his opportunity to get his job back, because he attempted that, and that's when all this stuff was revealed. And now, after they said they couldn't hire him, he disappeared. He disappears for what we know, and like I said, today, we don't know if he's working for another agency. And that is really a possibility, because sadly, some agencies, which is sad, like officers like him. You know, and this is what we have to fix, because this is what creates the divide between the community and the police department. And it's an easy fix when we got good officers telling on the bad officers. When we got bad officers the agency don't want in their agency, they just get rid of. So if this is a fixable situation, we just have to now take responsibility, not just the community, but the agency itself. Because what's happening, as we know with 1421, is that many officers are now being revealed that had created acts that is unbecoming of being a police officer, and yet they just quit their job or they was fired and nothing happened to them criminally, and they committed criminal acts. Like the Golden State Killer, 40 years, worked for the police department, did murders and rapes, and yet they finally caught up to him.
It is definitely eye-opening, this report, to say the least.
Yes, it is. And we didn't get all the documents yet. There's more documents to come, for what I understand.
Yeah, and this one I have is pretty redacted. So you saw the same one I have, the 94 pages with a lot of redactions in it.
Well, we got 114 pages. I think you should have 114 pages.
Well, maybe the report itself is 94, but there probably are 114 pages here, because there's like an intro and then the recommendations at the end.
Right.
Yeah. That's probably it's the same thing. Okay. Well, feel free. I'll call you after separately, just so I can catch up with you on a couple things. But thank you so much for talking with Amanda and Scott down there, and I'll call you just so I can follow up with just some off-camera questions. But I think that'll do it. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you too.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye. Thanks, Amanda.
Bye.
Scott.